Simon. Right,
Hey, James.
we're back and we're live. So I was just for anyone watching, I was just apologising to Simon because here in the UK, in the south of the UK, there's been some storm overnight, and as a consequence, literally everything is all over the place. Trees are down, flooding's everywhere. It's been a hell of a morning. So hopefully we'll get this all back on track. But just as a sort of a basic introduction for everybody, as always, this is all part of the book research that I'm doing alongside Dr. Amy Redmond, and we're putting everything together in terms of a series of interviews, because we know that not all of our interviews are going to go into the book, and so we're just sort of streaming all of our interviews. So there's a bank of content for everybody that might find some of the stuff that we're talking about interesting. I'm joined by Simon. Simon and I met in Hong Kong recently. It was a very chance meeting. So I feel very fortunate to have you on, Simon, and I'd love you just to do a very quick, basic introduction. Would be fantastic if you wouldn't mind.
Yeah, sure. So thanks, James, for the invitation. So I'm Simon. So I comes from Hong Kong. I work in an organization called Astri. It stands for Applied Science and Technology Research Institutions in Hong Kong. We are one of the government-owned R&D center in Hong Kong. So our focus actually under the Innovation and Technology Commission, there are 5 different R&D centers. And Astri is the one focusing in ICT, information communication technologies. So therefore, we do a lot of software development. So of course, there are some hardware involved. So my role basically is a business development director for a number of areas, that's including FinTech, property tech, construction tech, and art tech. So therefore, on a daily basis, I go and talk to different clients, trying to understand if they have any pain points. Is there anything Astri could help, either based on our research roadmap, or we can tailor-make solutions to address customer pain point. Because we belong to the government, therefore we are technically a non-profit making organization. So one of the key objectives for Astri is to using our technology, using our R&D expertise to help the industry to make them more competitive. So in terms of number of scientists, we have about 600 scientists in this building in Hong Kong. So they focus in different areas. So out of that 600, we broke down into somewhere around 20 to 25 teams. Each of the teams has their own expertise. So, some of the teams I'm dealing with are focusing in blockchain. Some is focusing in, the AI voice bot. Some is focusing in AR, VR technology, etc. So that's a very quick introduction of Astri. So so I've been with Astri for 7 years. And before I was in Astri, I was actually studying and working in the UK for over 25 years. So I came back to Hong Kong 8 years ago. Yeah,
quite different to the Surrey countryside that I know you now know.
Definitely.
What I'm really interested in is an element of the book that we're looking at is not just on sort of innovation and leadership and all of the things that come with transformation projects, with particularly large corporations that are trying to look at both how do they develop the business for today, but also how do they develop the business and sort of look forward, into the future. But the other aspect that I'm particularly interested in is the role that different bodies play in innovation journeys. Obviously, we're all very familiar with how the venture world works in terms of funding initiatives and getting them off the track. So you've got sort of the private enterprise element of it all. But I'm also particularly interested in the role that public bodies and governments have in innovation journeys. So could you just give me sort of just an understanding of within that sort of Hong Kong ecosystem, how are you funded? Are you funded exclusively from a government side, or is there public-private partnerships in there? How does that all manifest itself?
Okay, so as an organization, we get some funding from the Hong Kong government for the day-to-day running of the organization. So in simple term, if we are talking purely on a operation level, so we will get the funding from the government. But if you are talking about a research and development project level, that actually depends. Majority of the business model that we have are is like a private public partnership. So therefore, in simple term, in every year we have about 100 different R&D projects within our organization. I would say out of that, probably 30% of it would be funded privately by an enterprise in Hong Kong or even SMEs in Hong Kong. So 100% of the project funding will be funded by the, I would say, partner or clients. Okay, so that will take care of 30% of it. The others, I would say 60% of it will be a customer, customer together with the government fund the project. So it depends on the business model. Some of the business model, the government will contribute 50% of the project funding. Some of the other business model, the government will contribute up to something like 75% of it. Okay, so therefore that take care of 90% of our R&D projects. So then we left with the other 10%. So the other 10% could be totally funded by the Hong Kong government. So for example, if we have something in mind, this is a very, very new idea, very innovative, which we believe it could be too risky for our client to invest or to contribute, then we can obtain a funding from the Hong Kong government to carry out or to conduct such a R&D project. So we call this a seed funding from the Hong Kong government. So basically, those are the different kind of funding model that we have with the Hong Kong government or with the private organization.
Okay, so that's really interesting. So there's a complete mix. What I find quite fascinating, and it was one of the last things you just said there, was when something is perhaps too risky for a corporate to finance, you will seek seed funding for the idea from the government itself.
Yeah.
Have you got any examples of
sure.
what might be risky?
So when we say risky, it means the R&D may not actually be actually successful. Right. So I give you one example that a technology we started with the seed funding. OCR, optical character recognition. So this is a technology has been there for over 20 years. Basically, you can digitize your let's say your printed character. But what we have done is we started on OCR probably 7 years ago, but on handwritten Chinese character, and both simplified and traditional Chinese character, handwritten. So at that time, this is not very familiar in Hong Kong. But if you imagine 7-8 years ago, there are still a lot of organizations are using handwritten form. For example, banks. So if you want to change your address, you need to go into a bank, fill in a form. So and when you fill in the form, everything is handwritten. So it takes a long time so basically the banks needs to take the form and then enter back into the system, typing in back to the systems. So at that time we were thinking, okay, probably we can do with some innovation here. So we can do Chinese handwritten character OCR. Of course, at that time, purely we start with nothing. So what the easiest way or the safest way is for us to obtain a seed funding, to explore about this handwritten Chinese OCR, OCR technologies. because the last thing we want is we ask a funding from our client, and then at the end we are not able to deliver. So Astri is not like other research institution in Hong Kong or like university. University mainly do a lot of desktop research or writing research paper. But Astri, the A is stand for apply. So everything we do, it needs to become an application which can be commercialized, it can be used. So that's why for the example I just mentioned, we obtain a funding from the government so that we can kind of prove the technology can be carry on working with client, because at least we get the first concept or proof of concept up and running, and then start with a very small scope, and then we prove the technology does work, and then we can start talking to client. Do you have any pain point? Because we may able to address it, because we have already proven we have the capability of develop this OCR technology and make it work.
I think that's really interesting, because so just last week I was reading a passage in a book, and that day I was doing a conference like the one that you and I well, actually no, we didn't meet at the conference, but we met after the conference, and I read the passage out to the audience because I thought it was so profound in the sense of how innovation and transformation works. And it was around the challenges of ambiguity and uncertainty within innovation projects, and talking about, I think it's one of the biggest challenge that private companies, large corporations have when it comes to innovation, which is leaders, and as a consequence, decisions that they make are profoundly impacted by uncertainty, which is we don't know the impact. We don't know, and you used the word success earlier, we don't know the success that something might have on the organization. But with uncertainty, there might be a probability, as in it's likely that something like this will have this much of an impact on our bottom line. But we don't know. We're uncertain it will happen. And as a consequence, there is a risk to a leader making a decision or a leadership team. But ambiguity is the more difficult one, which is it's uncertain what might happen, but they don't even know what parameters they might be judged on yet as well. And it sounds to me, and this is what I want to put to you as to whether you agree or disagree with this, that what the likes of Astri and potentially other organizations are enabling is that businesses can take on uncertain decisions when at least there's a probability of success, whereas the likes of public bodies like Astri are able to take care of the more ambiguous elements where we can't even define what success will even look like at this point. You feel that's a fair...
I think that is a fair assumption or comments. So this is exactly, part of us is doing exactly taking care of the uncertainty of the technologies, the result or the output of it. Of course, that's part of it. The other part is, like I mentioned, I start with a seed project. So I've proven that the seed project does work. The technology has the capability. Then the next stage for usually for me is moving on to a bigger project with similar technology, but with clients sponsoring the project or contributing to the project. But at that time, it's still the client still doesn't has anything on from us. So basically, I always say to a lot of people that those kind of project I'm talking to my client is like selling the dream, because during the time I talk to them, I have nothing on me. I'm just talking about the concept or maybe some proven capability. So that's why I said yes, it is our nature, our role to take care of the uncertainty, but it's also what we also want to achieve is by taking care of this, small percentage of the uncertainty, we want to use this to make it big as well.
So that's one role that an organization like Astri has. Are there any other roles that you serve within an innovation process or a transformation process for some of your clients?
So of course, our key role is to do technology research, but other role I would say we also act as in a way like a consultant. So we will tailor or we will understand our client requirement, and we will recommend the best way forward for them. So either, sometimes we will even tell our client, you don't need to work with us because what you need is something available on the market. So you don't need us to reinvent the wheel. You don't need us to spend 12 months starting everything from scratch. You just get something off the shelf from the market. So so because our nature or our position in the industry, we are kind of non-profit and also government owned. So therefore, we've been seen as a neutral body. So we don't have any hidden agenda when we talk to our client. So that's the other way. And because of this position, sometimes sometimes when we are talking about a new innovation, it would be more easier to be accepted by both, government organization or the industry. So, one example is when we are, previously I was working on a project called a technology called federated learning. And then it is extremely, I would say it is extremely difficult for a vendor or a software house or a product owner to launch this product, because within this technologies there would be a lot of security or privacy element. So but with Astri position, it is a lot easier to have this technology developed by Astri to be accepted by the market. So I guess we have this natural, in a way, advantage. But using this advantage, we can serve the industry. So for example, the technology I mentioned, at the end, what we would like to do is using this technology able to serve the SMEs. So that's what, hopefully the SMEs can get a loan from the bank a lot easier. So at the end, hopefully this can be benefit to the the overall SME market in Hong Kong.
Yeah, so you're really facilitating that sort of outsourced and trusted, respected R&D department, which I should think probably makes a leader's role an awful lot easier when it comes to making that decision as to whether or not we investigate the future elements of it, especially given, because if I'm not mistaken, there are quite a few different options for businesses to work with you in terms of the funding and how much exposure they get, and as a consequence, who owns the IP. Because from what I'm understanding, there are some, when you wholly fund everything, obviously the IP stays with Astri. If it's part funded, it may stay with Astri, maybe with the corporate, or it stays with the corporate and they can license the IP. So I think there's a really clever relationship and partnership in there, and I think that's particularly interesting. Just picking up on a couple of points. You mentioned about the measurement of success earlier on. How, when it comes to R&D and Astri's role and a corporation's role, how do you measure success of a project?
Okay, So
I know that's really broad, I know, but
yeah,
I'm just
exactly.
in the sort of the learnings that you've had.
Sure. So I think for me, I can say there are probably three things. So the first one, of course, is the actual R&D, the actual development of the technology is proven it is actually works. So therefore, when we deliver our deliverable or technology application to our client, the first thing is, of course, that it has been accepted. Everything is according to what we have laid out in terms of the specification. So let's say if you use OCR as an example, we say it need to do the digitization or the OCR conversion within how many seconds. So those are the one of the acceptance criteria, for example. So that is the first thing. Secondly, for me is what we are delivered to our client is able to make a difference, or at least it can be used according to their plan. So it's no good to have something, you have developed an application, but after a year they will just put it aside, they won't be using it. So that for me is another measure of if it is successful or not. Of course, then the last thing, which is for me, is does it actually creating further commercialization? So that means the technology I have developed can, is there anyone comes in and want to license the technologies? Or if, for me as a business development person, if I go out to my client, I told them, I have this technology available. Would you like to license it because it can address this of your pain point? So if they say yes, then for me, this is another measurement of my success in terms of the technology we have developed. So I think those are the three main factor. And of course, there's others such as, do I generate enough, market feedback? Does the industry really know anything about this technology we have developed? All this kind of things. But for me, the three I mentioned are the key.
Okay, so let's. You and I met at a JLL event where I was very kindly invited along by the Hong Kong PropTech Association to see some of the work that JLL had been doing, and they developed two new pieces of software. One was looking at mainland China and essentially bringing transparency to a very hidden market around commercial listing. And that for me, I found actually was particularly interesting. But could you? And this is purely, I don't know the answer to this because you and I were. It was right at the end of the night.
Yeah.
Are JLL one of your customers? And if they are, can you go into some sort of detail as to how that relationship started? Who approached who? What sort of range did JLL come in at in terms of the partnership with you, and who is your point of contact there? Just give me some sort of color to that relationship.
Okay, so I think I will give you another example because JLL is not my client for the time being. So
Okay.
I was also invited by the Hong Kong PropTech Association for that event. But if I give you another example of my, let's say, construction tech
Yeah.
client. Yeah, so we were working with a client called Nexplore. Nexplore, I think, is actually an international construction innovation company. It is being formed by three different companies: CIMIC in Australia, Hochef in Germany, and I think it's ASC is in Spain. So the three together form a company called Nexplore, looking for different innovation technology for construction. And I think 4 years ago, set up a location or entity in Hong Kong, then we were actually approached because we were in the Hong Kong Science Park. And then I think through the Science Park linkage, so they link us up with this company called Explore. And then we will start talking to their innovation department. And that's how everything started, and then the more we got to know them, the more we believe they are very eager to have different kind of innovation technology to help to address the pain point. And then one day they told us, we are looking for a solution that can help with the construction site safety. So then they ask us, do we have do you have certain expertise? Do you have a certain idea? This is roughly what we want to do. And then this is how we started off. And then I think 4 years ago, then we signed the contract to work on an R&D project together. And then this basically is my first construction tech project. And then we have successfully developed the project, and they have really commercialized it. They used it in Hong Kong, and then also they ship it to the state, Australia, and Spain for different testing. And then I believe what they are going to do is they will be start manufacturing those hardware as well, and then going to to use it in their different construction sites throughout the globally under their site.
And who is your main contact at that construction technology?
Is the MD of Hong Kong. So the managing director, Nexplore Hong Kong, is my main contact.
Okay, so it was obviously at the top of the organization was the buy-in. Okay,
that's right.
And what stage of their transformation journey did you feel they were at? Was this to help them explore the benefits of technology? Were they already a long way into their journey and it was another product they were trying to develop? Was it at the start of their journey and therefore the relationship was very much about using you as a research hub to help them understand the sorts of benefits? Where were they on the sort of spectrum of their transformation journey?
I think if you are talking about Hong Kong, then they definitely are on the very early stage, because at that time they are only just forming, not forming, but establishing the Hong Kong lab in Science Park. So I would say definitely very early stage. So at that time, they would have the I would say their own requirement for the from the Hong Kong team. So and that is why at that time they look for different vendor, and and given that they are looking for something relatively innovative, so that's why they come to us to explore what kind of idea. Usually we start with we start with different roadmap, different innovation technology we are thinking, what we have done before, and then trying to brainstorm to see if there's any scenario or use cases that our technology can take care of. And this is how everything started. So given that is kind of early stage in their innovation journey, and then I believe they saw something they like, and they saw something which they believed it can be applied in their scenario, and so that's why they have chosen to to work with us. As also, of course, we can leverage the government funding as a starting point, and also Astri is a well-established organization in Hong Kong. So for them, it is, they feel secure, they feel safe, they feel they can trust.
Yeah, trust is an important word, isn't it? And so just to summarize, because I want to make sure I'm I'm being fair to the organizations that work with an Astri. It sounds as if they are in the early stages of their innovation journey, and so it's very much they need somebody to hold their hand that they trust and they know can deliver, and help them on that sort of start of their journey. It seems that it's relatively risk-free financially in terms of the objections they might receive from their own stakeholders. If they were to fully fund an exploration like that, would be quite difficult. But actually, there is a mutual symbiosis between the public body and the private body of that R&D. So it works for both of you.
Yeah.
But it also sounds as if, and I think I'm fair to say that the people that you are engaged with are at the top of an organization, not sort of middle management.
Correct.
Is that a fair summation of what?
I think most of it is definitely fair to say. Just one other thing I just want to clarify is, I think it's fair to say they are in an early transformation journey for Hong Kong, because they were just established the location, and also in that product or solution category, because they are very well established, or they're very well in advance in other technology global, such as, I think they did they did a lot of blockchain solution very early on, probably many years ago. Yeah.
Okay, so that's really interesting. So what you're actually saying is it may be early in the journey for that particular process, technology, or research,
and location. Yeah.
but they are most likely quite established in other business units. So this is a very good way of approaching a new project, a new business, a new technology, because that makes perfect sense now. And it's part of that initial phase of exploration of what do we do, where do we go, how do we scale. Okay, that makes I can see how that works. Do you feel, I mean, you said right at the start that you're the director of PropTech, FinTech and Art-Tech. So you've obviously got quite a lot of exposure in different sectors. In terms of the transformation journeys, in terms of the attitude to innovation, how do you feel the built world, which encompasses a lot of the property sector, how do you feel it compares to other industries that you deal with?
Okay, we did certain research on the let's say technology adaptation. So we knew from the research we have done. Actually, I was told by my client in the construction industry. So basically, he told me that for the using construction industry as an example, is probably the second last industry that has adapted technology in Hong Kong.
Yeah.
Okay. But on the other hand, I see there's a lot of potential. And also over the last, I would say 4 to 5 years, I see things are picking up very quickly. So, over the last few years, if you go to different conferences, seminars, you will see there's a lot of technologies. Innovation has been developed purely for the property and construction industry. So, and also I think in the in the JLL event, they did mention it is growing faster than FinTech. So I remember that is one slide the guy mentioned in the event, which I was quite at the beginning I thought, wow, that's crazy. But if you think about it, if you are talking about the pure growth, yes, I do believe that, because of course FinTech in Hong Kong.
I'm very wary of those sorts of comparisons. When that person was talking about the growth was faster than FinTech, was that in terms of amount of investment flowing in? Was it in the
Yeah.
rate of change? Where was that growth?
Of course, I didn't, because that is one particular slide he mentioned, and I didn't ask any question. So, but if you ask me, I believe it's the change that actually represent the growth, which then I think it makes a lot of sense, because as you know, because fintech started a long time ago, so therefore it kind of come to a place that in terms of growth or further innovation, they're kind of limited. But for construction and prop, they are is kind of relatively green from a technology perspective. So there's a lot of room for growth indeed.
Yeah, no, I would agree. The only difference, and I'm interested if you think this is fair, but fintech seems to have become an industry in its own right.
Yeah.
You might argue that PropTech is an industry, but I get a sense that the traditional, more incumbent sector thinks that PropTech is it's almost a dirty word. And I don't actually think it's helping the sector particularly to develop, because I think fintech in its own right is actually its own sector, its own industry, but PropTech needs property to work. Fintech doesn't need a bank to work. It actually can work in isolation of anything else. And so I get a sense that PropTech needs the property sector more than fintech needs the financial system to operate.
In a way, I think it is true now. But if you're looking back a certain number of years when we started fintech, it is heavily relies on banks as well. But I think now it doesn't that much, because it kind of, I would say, like you said, first of all, it's very mature. It can work on its own, and also now they have a lot of alternative. You can work with, payment. You can work on the wallet. You can work with crypto. So we doesn't really rely on bank. But we started working on fintech 6-7 years ago. We worked with the regulator a lot, so the Hong Kong Monetary Authority. We work with different banks a lot, because those are like our main clients.
Okay, yeah. Interesting. So I suppose my final question for you, in terms of the built environment particularly, are there any technologies that you feel are particularly interesting, given what you've seen as an R&D lab? Where do you see the most potential for change?
So you are talking about mainly on the property and on the construction side, or overall, general overall?
No, on the property and construction side.
Okay. So for me, if I looking at the construction side, in Hong Kong, they're always saying there are 3 pain points. So the first one is safety. So let's put it this way. I think everything, all the technology we talk about, a lot of it will focus on safety. Okay, so the second pain point is the people are aging, and not many people would like to join this industry, because they feel it's quite intense, quite hard work, especially for the younger generation. And then the third pain point is always the adaptation of technologies. But I believe this is actually, changing. So therefore, for me, I believe safety would be the key. So any kind of technology that could help with safety, it would be something we focus a lot, and it would be, be value a lot on. So one of the technology currently I'm looking at, which I believe it is extremely important and valuable, is every construction site you have multiple cranes.
Yeah.
So recently in Hong Kong, there are quite a lot of, well, not quite a lot, but a few accidents related to crane. So now we are looking into a technology. Uh, how would we able to use technology to monitor how healthy the crane is? So those are, we, by monitoring the fatigue of of the metal,
Right.
we could able to identify, or using the concept of predictive maintenance, we would able to identify if any of the frame within the crane is looking not so healthy, it needs to be replaced. So those are the area we're looking into, which I find extremely interesting. And then if you are talking about properties and of course, ESG is something everyone is talk about. But for me, I also think about other area is such as, can we, there's always a lot of privacy involved. When you have a lot of CCTV installed in a in a properties, people will, show their concern. Or at least in Hong Kong, they will. They do not want CCTV looking at them when they enter the building, for example. So we have different technology to take care of the privacy, but also can somehow identify, or I would say identify, or I can predict what kind of motion are you currently doing. So this, imagine if you are in an estate, and then you know if I have the ability to based on your behavior, I know what kind of action you are currently doing, then it could improve the property management quality, and also sometimes safety as well, because this kind of technology can be used in a swimming pool, which we always say, a lot of the lifeguard may not have the capability to looking after so many people in the same time. But if you have technologies, you're looking at the swimming pool, and based on the machine learning, this guy, the motion or the action he's doing is like drowning or seeking for help. Then you can instantly raise the alert to the lifeguard. And at
Yeah.
that time, lifeguard can have a look and see where he needs to look, and is that guy really struggling. So that's something which I always find it important, because at the end of the day, is safety always comes first.
And it's never going to go away either.
Exactly.
It's
Yeah.
always there. That's really interesting. I'd never consider. I mean, obviously, from a construction perspective, safety is paramount. I hadn't put that into my thesis of thinking around the drivers of change within our sector. I talked a lot about affordability. I talked a lot about sustainability as two factors. Then another expert said, yeah, James, that's right. He said, but actually, if you talk about the industry wanting to change, productivity is actually the key driver, and making the workforce more productive. And I was like, yes, actually, that's a really good point. I hadn't added the safety angle into that, but you're absolutely right. And I remember, it must be more than a decade ago, in the very early days of virtual reality, I remember being at a conference in Dublin, and there was a virtual reality entrepreneur there, and an academic, and it was the academic who, in the panel that we were on, was talking about the impact that virtual reality, in particular, not augmented at this point, but virtual, was having on the planning process of construction. And she wasn't talking about it from the perspective of, oh, isn't it wonderful? It will help planning go through, because the architect and the builders can look at it and visualize it and say, oh, okay, it works. But she was talking about it from the perspective of safety, which is, for the first time, you could put the architect, a planner, and the builder into a virtual reality simulation at the same time, and the builder can say to the architect, listen, that isn't impossible. That is not possible for me to build it the way you want me to build it. Equally, the planner in live real time can say to the architect, that's not going to work from a safety perspective, so I'd rule out. And it meant that there was a three-way conversation with aspects of safety and building being important. So you've added another driver to my list, and I think that's a really suitable point to finish this talk, at least on that live stream anyway. So Simon, just publicly, while I turn this stream off, thanks very